Once upon a time, in the days of yore and the epoch of ancient tales, there lived a man named Maruf. He was a builder by trade in a quaint village bordered by a small river that flowed almost year-round, surrounded by dense forests. Maruf relied on felling trees and extracting their strong and sturdy trunks for his work, as construction at the time predominantly used wood, supplemented with clay and straw. Maruf was exceedingly well known in his village and the neighboring ones for earning just enough dirhams to support his family, who lived in a simple home he had built with his own hands. He was a diligent worker, renowned for crafting various innovative house designs throughout the region, serving both the affluent and the impoverished who relied on his skills for diverse constructions, each according to their means. Generous with his extensive experience, which he had honed over many years having learned the trade from his father since childhood, Maruf had also contributed to constructing a small dam near the village to avert floods, enhancing his reputation as a skilled builder far and wide. As the days passed, Maruf in his labor neither lamented the meagerness of his living nor the bitterness of his work. On the contrary, he always worked with all his might, cherishing his craft, which had made his name synonymous with quality work, kindness, and diligence. His wife Maliha was a virtuous woman who lived with him without complaint or discontent, neither about the scant money Maruf earned nor their modest means. She was a commendable nurturer to him and their children. One day, while Maruf was asleep, he dreamt a peculiar dream where he found himself in a wondrous world filled with bizarre creatures that looked at him in astonishment. He tried to discern his surroundings but could not. The place was more akin to a figment of imagination. The next morning, while having breakfast with his family before heading to work, he discussed his odd dream with his wife, feeling as though it was more reality than fantasy. However, Maliha smiled and said to him, "My dear husband, it's merely a figment of your dreams, do not fret over it. We all see strange dreams now and then." Despite her reassurances, the dream continued to preoccupy Maruf, especially as it began recurring with new events, the last of which saw him beside a peculiar tree. This tree served as a home to many of the strange animals he had previously seen, and once again, they all looked upon him with a peculiar and wondrous gaze. Maruf awoke from his sleep, unable to discern the meaning of this recurring dream, but chose not to tell his wife for fear of being mocked. One morning, a wealthy villager knocked on his door, requesting Maruf to build a grand house suitable for him and his wife. He insisted on using strong timber for the construction and promised a substantial sum of money upon completion. Maruf was delighted by the rich man's request, sensing the potential for significant earnings, especially since the man was known for his generosity. The affluent man detailed his expectations for the house before leaving. Eager to start, Maruf grabbed his axe and donkey, packed some provisions and water, bid his wife farewell, and set off into the forest to find the appropriate timber he had promised. This time, he ventured deeper into the woods, hoping to find strong timber suitable for building. He examined every large tree he came across, utilizing his vast experience to identify the strongest woods by touch and sight. However, after many hours, he found nothing that suited his needs and decided to rest under a large, shady tree. While eating, his gaze wandered upwards and he spotted an unusual tree he had never seen before. Putting his food aside, he began to feel the tree and knock on its trunk, amazed by its extraordinary hardness and durability. He sat back down, resolving to take some of its strong branches after finishing his meal. Once rested and done with his food, he took out his axe and, rolling up his sleeves, struck a branch with all his might. To his astonishment, the blow felt as if it had struck stone, and the axe bounced back without even a scratch on the branch. Puzzled by this occurrence, Maruf tried again but to no avail. The axe continued to rebound as if the branch was impervious to damage. Stopping for a moment, he scratched his head and exclaimed, "Such strength this tree possesses, I have never encountered its like in all my life." Pausing momentarily to think, Maruf decided to climb the massive tree in hopes that the branches higher up might be less tough, allowing him to gather what he needed. Despite the difficulty, he successfully climbed the tree and perched on a branch, scanning the strange new view of the forest around him due to its height above the other trees. Suddenly, a fierce wind shook the tree unexpectedly, causing Maruf to lose his balance and fall from a great height. His fall was accompanied by a loud scream before he lost consciousness. After some time, Maruf opened his eyes to find himself surrounded by bizarre and wondrous creatures exactly like those he had seen in his dreams. Lying on the ground, his heart and eyes filled with amazement. He wondered if he was dreaming again. It felt as though the fall had transported him to a completely different world. But where am I now? His looks were full of questions, but he got up, feeling his head for any injuries from the fall, while all around him, creatures stared at him in strange amazement. The creatures were astonishing. He saw horses with human heads, enormous deer that towered over him like he was a rabbit, and peculiarly shaped birds like none he had ever seen before. Suddenly, breaking the silence, a white horse with a human head spoke to him. "Is that you? We have been waiting for you for decades, as our ancestors told us you would come to save our world from evil." Stunned by what he heard, Maruf, who knew nothing of this creature or this strange world, gathered his composure and looked at the horse and said, "Are you speaking to me, horse?" The horse replied, "Yes, sir." Maruf was too shocked to respond, but his silence reflected his astonishment. As he was processing this, a huge deer with intricately entangled antlers approached from a distance. It was clear that he was their leader, as the crowd parted to let him through. The deer said, "This is you, Maruf. Come with me, my son." Maruf was amazed that the deer knew his name and thought to himself, "Am I really that famous?" As he walked behind the large deer, Maruf was in disbelief at the world around him. It was a strange place filled with bizarre trees, a blue sky dotted with clouds, and birds of various shapes and colors flying about. Flowers and trees seemed to greet the deer as if they could speak and understand what was being said. Following the leader deer, Maruf walked for a long time, with other animals trailing behind him and staring in amazement, which unnerved him. However, he recalled the dream he had seen several times, which matched exactly what was happening to him now. Initially, he thought he was dreaming again, but soon realized he was living in reality, and his fall had transported him to another world, almost like a fantasy. They continued walking until they reached a large house carved into the rock of a great mountain. As Maruf looked around, his mind nearly spun from the amazement of what he saw. Eventually, he found himself in front of a grand picture of a man who looked exactly like him. He stared at the picture, unable to believe his eyes. It was an exact match for him. If he had known he had a twin, he would have thought the picture was his. At that moment, Maruf understood the amazement in the eyes of the creatures around him, who looked at him as if they knew him. Yet, he still did not know why he was in this strange world. Maruf asked the deer, "Who is this in the picture, O leader deer?" The deer looked at him and said, "It is you, Maruf. Do you not recognize yourself? We have been waiting for you for many years." Maruf did not understand what was being said. He began to get agitated, his blood boiling, and asked again, "I have never been here before, and this is the first time in my life I have seen this strange, wonderful world." The deer stared at him and said, "Did you not see it in your dream, Maruf?" Maruf fell silent, realizing that the dream he had been seeing was hinting at something he did not understand. The deer continued, "Dear Maruf, the prophecy says that a human is the only one who can save our world from the looming evil. Our ancestors have been telling us about you for decades. That's why your picture has been here for a long time. We had almost given up hope of you coming to us, but God Almighty has answered our prayers and fulfilled our wish. We are now experiencing difficult days and do not know what to do." Maruf looked at the deer and said, "I do not understand anything. I beg you, return me to my world so I can go back to my wife, my children, and my job. I think you are all mistaken in what you say. It's true that the picture looks like me, but I have nothing to do with what is happening here. I am just a simple mason. I couldn't even protect myself from a simple fall from a tree, so how can I be a hero and save other worlds? Please, O deer, explain to me what is happening to me." The deer explained, "In our world, our ancestors lived in happiness and bliss with all the creatures you see around you, securely and stably. Each one of us fulfilled our duties towards others and worked for the good of this enchanting, beautiful world. However, several years ago, a wicked man named Asif arrived in this world. We don't know how he got here, but he brought many villains like himself. These men are hard, ruthless, and strong, knowing neither mercy nor love. Initially, we offered to live together in peace and harmony, but they refused and were determined to take over our world and control its resources. Asif now controls half of this world and plans to seize the other half. He threatens our existence here and has killed many of these peaceful creatures. The tree you came through is a source of these resources, providing us with all our needs, and we have guarded it for a long time. However, recently, the number of villains and their power has increased, and we can no longer resist them because they possess weapons we cannot counter. Our ancestors told us that a man would come to this world and save us from the evil of these people. Today, the prophecy has been fulfilled, and we found you lying on the ground under the tree. That's why these creatures looked at you in surprise. They had seen your picture before and have known you well for a long time, and they have been waiting for you to save us now. Maruf, more astonished, said, "Dear leader, how can I save you when I possess nothing? I have no superpowers to repel these villains. Believe me, I am just a simple construction worker, powerless." The deer replied, "And that is exactly what we need. We need you to build fortresses and castles for us to shelter from these villains. If we can hold them off for another week, we will succeed in defeating them. The prophecy states that when 3 moons appear in the sky, they will not be able to take over our world. Look up at the sky." Maruf looked up and saw 2 moons, which surprised him. He realized that he was in a world completely different from his own and said in astonishment, "I see 2 moons. What does this mean?" The deer said, "Yes, and the 3rd will appear in a week. Then, whoever controls that blessed tree you fell from will rule this world. If the tree falls into the hands of the villains, we will no longer exist. Recently, our strength has been weakening little by little, unlike the power of these villains, which increases day by day." As Maruf immersed himself in thought, uncertain of what to say, a profound realization dawned upon him. He silently affirmed, "This is strange indeed. However, I cannot abandon those who seek my help. I have always made it a point never to refuse anyone's request. If my skills can serve and save them, then I will assist these kind creatures no matter the effort or fatigue involved. I will dedicate all my knowledge to protect the great tree from these villains. It seems it was this tree that brought me here at the right time, and all the dreams I had were but signs of what was to happen to me here. Indeed, I might be the one who can save them." The deer, with hopeful eyes, asked Maruf, "Can you help us, kind builder?" Maruf replied, "Although I don't understand all that you have mentioned, I will not forsake your aid, kind ones." A great cheer erupted from the creatures, shaking the earth and the trees, resonating everywhere. Maruf continued, "However, we need a significant amount of time to construct the fortresses and barriers to prevent them from approaching. Do we have that time?" The deer leader responded, "We are entirely at your disposal, Maruf. We have everything you need for your work. The rocks are plentiful, and the trees will offer their strong branches for our use." Maruf sat down to contemplate his next steps and then requested the leader to explore the area they lived in so he could plan the site properly. He surveyed the locations where he could build castles and fortresses to fend off Asif and his men. After a grueling journey across the region, he began to plan and sketch various buildings. Everything Maruf needed was immediately provided. After hours of hard work, Maruf finalized all his plans, and it was time to begin. As soon as he signaled readiness and rolled up his sleeves, thousands of creatures stood by his side, awaiting his commands. Everything Maruf saw seemed like fantasy, but his determination fueled his vigor. Different animals started bringing the required materials. Strong branches were gathered to lay the foundations of the fortresses, and rocks from the surroundings were artistically placed by animals and birds in a way he had never anticipated. The pace of work was fast, unlike anything Maruf had experienced before. As he turned around, he saw that the animals accomplished in a short time what would take him days in his world. The work continued day and night, with Maruf laboring tirelessly and resting only briefly. He was keenly aware that the battle was against time, and the work needed to be completed several days before the villains had planned their attack. In 6 days, the castles and fortresses were solidly in place, impervious even to the mightiest of armies. Under Maruf's meticulous guidance, who insisted that his work be unparalleled in the world, catapults were installed atop the fortifications to hurl stones, and he taught the animals how to operate them. The structures were extremely robust, with the creatures stationed atop them, ready to defend their beautiful land, even at the cost of their lives. As the appointed time drew near, fear gripped everyone's hearts, and anxiety filled the air. They all knew that losing this battle would mean losing their enchanting world and their lives. As night fell, everyone waited in their positions, prepared for the decisive battle. The deer leader brought a garment to Maruf, identical to the one in the picture hanging in the stone house, and said, "Wear this robe, Maruf, for it will protect you from their arrows and swords, as it was bestowed upon you by the great tree. We were told it's a magical robe that no weapon can penetrate, crafted especially for you long ago." Maruf looked at the robe, which appeared very ordinary, yet he believed in everything he was told. He donned it immediately, feeling a surge of strength and bravery like never before. Mere minutes later, war drums sounded, and trumpets blared, signaling the onset of the fierce battle. Maruf and the deer leader rushed to the top of the fortresses, and they saw a massive army advancing. Dressed in black with gleaming silver helmets reflecting the twin moon's light, they numbered in the thousands, all armed and determined to conquer the world of the animals. Maruf, astounded by the strength of these villains, said to the leader, "I can smell the evil from here. I have never seen such wicked people. But we will not let them take the blessed tree. God is with us as long as we are doing good, and we must triumph." He commanded all the animals to commence the battle. Asif, the evil man, was taken aback by the unexpected sight of the fortresses and castles, having thought he would easily overrun the area and swiftly dispose of the animals. His hopes dashed, he realized that he did not have the time to breach these defenses. Yet, he was resolute in his intention to conquer this world and its riches. It was a battle he had prepared for over many years, and he was determined to win this pivotal conflict. Knowing he had only one day or even less before the emergence of the third moon, after which he and his army would vanish forever, Asif raised his sword high and shouted, "Come on men, destroy those fortresses." His massive army surged forward, Asif leading, with arrows flying through the air striking those on the fortresses. But Maruf had fortified the upper regions of the buildings and commanded the use of catapults to hurl stones at the soldiers. The battle commenced with Asif's forces using all their might to break through the fortresses and structures built by Maruf, but stones rained down on them, shattering the siege equipment they brought. The fight continued with intense exchanges and casualties on both sides. Maruf moved from place to place, striving to repel Asif's assault using various methods, aided by the animals and giant birds. The battle raged for hours, with the animals successfully holding off Asif's advance. When Asif brought in his catapults and began battering the fortresses with all his strength, without causing them to budge, he started feeling the sting of defeat against these animals, but he was determined to see his plan through. Asif gradually broke down the walls, while the animals defended fiercely, exhausting everyone involved in this ferocious battle. In just a few hours, the third moon would rise in the sky at dawn, signaling Asif's impending defeat. He sent his scouts to observe the fortresses, soon learning that a human Maruf had helped construct them. They quickly informed him about Maruf, who was commanding the battle from atop the fortresses. Asif wanted revenge on Maruf, feeling defeat imminent and knowing he was running out of time to reach the tree and conquer the world. He took his bow and fired an arrow upward, aiming to hit Maruf in the back, but was shocked when the arrow broke upon touching Maruf's back. Asif couldn't understand it. He tried again, but each time an arrow hit Maruf, it broke and fell to the ground. Despair filled Asif, and he felt the bitter taste of defeat, realizing he could not breach the fortresses built by Maruf. Just minutes later, dawn broke, and the third moon appeared in the sky. Asif fell to the ground, swallowed by the harsh defeat that shattered all his plans. Asif and his army began to fade from the earth, disappearing bit by bit. As the sun began to rise, it heralded the end of evil in this beautiful and enchanting world. The echoes of victory resounded across the land and the skies. Tears of joy streamed from Maruf's eyes, overwhelmed by the success of his endeavors and the salvation he had brought to the gentle animals from the clutches of Asif and his men. The animals, overjoyed, celebrated everywhere, their blessed tree shining with generosity and grace upon all. Finally, the time for farewells arrived. Everyone gathered at the great tree, gratitude and appreciation evident on their faces. Maruf had become a hero, having saved the land from the evil of Asif and his soldiers. As everyone bid Maruf a heartfelt farewell, the dear leader approached him and presented him with a golden key, saying, "This key, hero, is your passage to our world whenever you wish. Simply place the key in the trunk of the tree to open a door through which you can pass into our world." He also presented Maruf with a box of gold and jewels as a token of gratitude for his efforts. Maruf held the key close to the tree, and a door opened, revealing his own world from whence he had come. He bid farewell to everyone, waving after receiving many gifts. As soon as he passed through the door, he returned to his world. Moments later, the door vanished, and the tree returned to its usual form. Maruf placed the key in his pouch and returned home after a week's absence from his family and work, his face adorned with joy and pride from his heroic deeds. Yet, he wondered, who would believe me? No one will believe what happened to me, so I won't tell anyone about that strange world. He finally arrived home and knocked on the door. His wife, her face marked with misery, despair, and sadness, opened it. But the moment she saw him, tears cascaded down her cheeks like waterfalls, and she embraced her husband for a long time, unable to utter a single word. The shock was immense. She had thought her husband had disappeared forever, especially after the extensive searches by the villagers, and had lost hope of his return. Yet today, she saw him before her. The joy of the husband and children was unmatched, and many questions about Maruf's absence circulated among the villagers, but Maruf never spoke of his adventure in the strange and wonderful world of the tree. He would always go to that tree, sit under it, and remember the days he spent in that world. As days passed, Maruf's financial situation improved drastically through the gold he had obtained, making him one of the wealthiest in the town. No one knew the secret behind Maruf's wealth, leading to various tales and stories among the villagers. Some whispered that Maruf had discovered a great treasure, while others speculated that he had been blessed with fireproof gold and money. Yet, the truth remained known only to him. One day, his wife spoke up, "Isn't it time you told us about the secret behind your disappearance, the gold in your possession, and that golden key you keep hidden in your wardrobe? What is its story? Must I live in constant wonder about it? Please, Maruf, tell me your hidden secret. I am your wife, and I promise I will not share it with anyone." Maruf looked at her and replied, "All right, Maliha, the time has come for me to tell you everything. You and the children deserve to know this secret that I have kept from you all this while. Tomorrow morning, we shall all go on an outing where you will learn the truth about my disappearance." The following day, the family gathered around Maruf and headed towards the marvelous tree deep in the forest. Upon reaching the tree, Maruf took out the key, inserted it into the trunk, and to everyone's amazement, a secret door opened right before the eyes of his astonished wife and children. Their shock was palpable, but they trusted Maruf, the simple and good builder. Maruf invited everyone to enter, and within moments, they were all inside the wonderful world. When the strange animals saw Maruf, they called out his name and in unison exclaimed, "Welcome, our hero Maruf." His wife and children were stunned by what they saw and heard. Words froze in their throats at the sight they had never imagined possible. The animals played joyfully with Maruf's children, bringing smiles to their faces and laughter that filled the air. After this revealing journey, Maruf, his wife, and their children lived in bliss and happiness, treating this strange and marvelous world like a lush garden they could visit whenever they longed for its beauty.